Believe me, AI is a commodity. Every organization will have AI, but your data is unique. But that is also not going to give you differentiation. What is going to give you is how do you treat that data? How do you aggregate? How do you prepare? How do you cleanse? How do you govern that data? That is going to make the difference on that journey.
Customer 360 eats AI for lunch, since we're at lunch. And
Data.
And data.
Data eats AI.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about data, Francis. Thank you. I love this little thought that I picked up in terms of Customer 360. A robust Customer 360 strategy is the bridge between your current data infrastructure and the AI-powered future. It's how organizations move from reactive to predictive and from insight to foresight. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We invite you to your table discussion to talk about this a little bit, what you're doing in Customer 360 and data optimization and how you're moving to AI, if that relates. And then if you do have some questions, when our speaker comes up, he's going to give some time for Q&A as well. So I'll introduce the speaker. We have till about 12:15 to just have discussion at your table, and then we'll get back with the program. Thanks.
Thanks for Relevance for bringing me in here. Welcome, everyone. I see a lot of faces in here, many different industries, many different customer segments from, we have seen success and failures, and you have seen success and failures when you are, engaging, understanding, having a commitment with your customers, losing customers, gaining customers. There are many reasons for that, right? And AI is on top of mind for everyone. What I'm going to tell you that, AI is important, yes. Data is also important. Change management, processes, blueprints, all of those things are equally kind of important, right? But when it comes to, every meeting, every hour, every day we go into, AI is on top of mind when we want to engage with customers, when we want to segment customers, when we want to, bring campaigns in front of them, right? And when it comes to AI, we talk about, a lot of questions around which AI model, which LLM libraries. I'm already doing predictive analytics. How can generative AI be added on top of it? Nothing wrong with all of those questions, right? What I'm going to say is that what I tell our buyers and our clients is that, data is also important, right? Is your data, is that the right data you're using for personalization, right? What if it is outdated? What if the person who has been managing the data ecosystem left the company? What is the backup plan, right? Am I using unauthorized kind of data, right? So that is where the foundation for every AI engagement starts with a strong data foundation, right? And that is where the gist of my presentation is, right? When you look at data, again, we are going to break it apart in 4 different parts on how the data foundation should look like. But first and foremost, data becomes the differentiation for AI. It becomes the foundation for AI. We have been using AI in marketing and data in marketing for many years. There are many, many successes out there, many failures out there. I don't want to go into a lot more details. Couple of examples I want to bring it out here. From a failure kind of a standpoint, how many are you aware of Air Canada's example from last year? Not many. Air Canada had a chatbot. One of the travelers went on the chatbot. He had a death in his family, and he wanted to book a ticket for bereavement fare. And the chatbot gave the answer, yeah, go ahead and book the ticket. We will refund you after you finish your travel within 90 days. But guess what? Air Canada's policy does not allow you to get a refund after you book the ticket and do the travel. So the guest booked the ticket, took the flight, filed for refund. Air Canada denied it based on their own policy. But the chatbot gave the answer. right? So it went all the way into the court. He got a partial refund for the wrong information the Air Canada's chatbot gave you, right? So that was an example from a failure kind of a standpoint. From a success kind of a standpoint, Swarovski had an AI center of excellence. They started to build the data foundation and AI foundation with three big things. They were looking at improving their campaigns, improving their commerce, and improving their customer success. So they deliberately started at the data foundation level, right? They brought in data from e-commerce systems, store systems, mobile apps, for example, and created that customer 360 kind of framework, right? The first was application of a recommendation engine for their campaigns, for their digital online presence, right? So they took all of the data, built the AI recommendation models to improve their campaigns for their digital storefront. The second was they combined their AI search facility with their product catalog so that they can improve their how the products are being discovered online when somebody goes on their website, for example, right? Or they look for products in their app. So that was another example of how they improved their commerce facility. And then I think building their knowledge base, they also, and the data foundation, they also made sure that their customer success organization gets that same information so that when somebody calls in for a problem with an order or problem with the quality of their products, they get the right information, right? So that was the application of data foundation from a campaign standpoint, commerce, and from customer success kind of a standpoint. So those, again, there are many, many more examples. More will come on board. I think that really the gist of the foundation over here is look at the data, look at the bias in the data, look at the model bias, the AI bias, look at change management. Those are the things which are equally kind of important from a technology kind of a standpoint. So what we're going to look at 4 different aspects over here. First is what does data preparation mean? Like, what is the right kind of data foundation for your AI-based marketing, right? So that's the first thing. The second is we're going to look at governance, right? How does, dynamic kind of governance help build trust? And trust, how can trust be the differentiator for your brand, right? That's the second thing. The third is, customer 360 requires personalization, right? So how can high touch personalization can serve as a differentiation? And then the fourth is, relevance, this was different kind of a request from relevance. Look at your applications within the customer 360 domain and what is important. What is me too right now? And what is the next, where does next set of applications from customer 360 come in, and where does agentic AI and generative AI kick in? So selecting those right kind of use cases, that's what we'll look at. So, IDC, for example, does a lot of surveys, right, with buyers and with partners and clients, for example, right? So, the CMO priorities survey we did back in November of 2024 with more than 500 people globally, right? So, 3 biggest things which came out from the survey, the 3 biggest kind of priorities. First is they want to create this unified kind of omni-channel experience. So first objective. The second is they want to increase use of AI. The third is they want to improve their data maturity, right? All of those 3 things are interconnected, right? You have the objective, you have AI, and you want data. But within organization, everybody has objectives. Believe me, AI is a commodity. If you think about it, models are becoming more and more common, right? So every organization will have business objectives. Every organization will have AI. Every organization will have skills and talent to build those AI. But what is unique is that every organization has that enterprise data, which is unique to your organization. You can augment that data with second-party, third-party data, but your data is unique. But that is also not going to give you differentiation. What is going to give you is how do you treat that data? How do you aggregate? How do you prepare? How do you cleanse? How do you govern that data? That is going to make the difference on that journey from having a unified experience, using AI, and building their data platform. So how does the data platform look like? Like many of the organizations over here have some form of data platform. So I'm not telling you to build something from scratch. You have some components of this data platform, right? But there are some unique elements at each layer, and that's what I'll try to bring it out, right? So if you think about at the bottommost layer, like systems of data, this is where all of the data gets collected, right? What is unique from a customer 360 perspective is focus on, you have structured data. Have you thought about how can I bring unstructured data in there, right? Call transcripts, chat transcripts. Those are the things where customer intents are there. Transactions are happening, but what was I thinking in my mind, but I did not execute on it. That's the intention, right? So think about unstructured data, for example, right? So that's something is different. More and more customers are thinking about that. If you move above at the data services layer, a lot of people do identity resolution, right? I mean, I am part of a household, right? I have one phone. I might have two phones, but everything is connected to me as an individual. That everybody's doing that, right? What is important is how can you augment that with clean data, for example? How can you think about not just customers, think about devices, for example? Think about stores, for example. How can I build profiles around not just customers? Think about non-human entities I can build around and market around that. Right? Where does my device go? Which location? So think that is something which is different, and few organizations are doing that. If I go above at the AI layer, a lot of the organizations are doing predictive AI, right? The thing is build up your skill set and your talent. What do you have when you are already doing predictive prescriptive analytics, predictive AI? How can I build up to do LLMs and generative AI, right? How can I build up the skill set so that I can look at, augmenting a predictive journey with assistants and agents, for example, right? And then on the right hand side over there is, the governance. We'll talk about the governance over here, but it's also the analytics and insights, right? My models are not static. My data is going to drift. My AI and models are going to drift. My business requirements are going to change. So the analytics and insights are going to help you monitor and optimize and improve beyond what you already have. If I take a deeper dive from a customer 360 standpoint, right? Now, this is the traditional kind of a journey, 9-step journey. Some customers will definitely go through all of those 9 steps on building a customer 360 kind of a profile. Some of them will find that, I need to pay attention to maybe 6 out of those 9 steps and maybe take back because I don't have skills and talent on all of those 9 steps, right? So let me go through each of them with some unique kind of elements over here, right? Data aggregation, right? So if you think about it, over here, the maturity of the organization comes in big time, right? I mean, some might prefer to start with structured data. Some might prefer to start with structured or batch and real-time kind of data, right? So data aggregation is very simple connectivity, mature, me too kind of a step. Data management is where a lot of the customers stumble because this is where you're talking about building data pipelines, data quality, data cleansing, data profiling, data integration kind of for building that customer 360 kind of profiles. Identity resolution and profiles. So, as I mentioned, more and more customers are willing to share their data, but they're also expecting that you, use enhanced privacy kind of techniques. Protect my data. If I'm going to share, the reciprocal is I want you to protect my data. So that's where a lot of customers are spending technology around enhanced privacy enhancing techniques, for example, from an identity resolution standpoint. The audience assembly and customer journeys, I think what is happening over there is when you're building more and more the concept is I'm building segment of one. That is the next kind of buzzword right? I want to build, like, segments usually includes collection of people in so that I can market it. I can send a campaign to it, right? But more and more it's becoming like segment of one, right? So how can audiences could be augmented by attributes like demographic, psychographic, all of those social kind of attributes, but how can I augment it with more predictive type of attributes? How can I augment my audience based on contextual kind of touch points? Touch points from multiple channels. I might start on a WhatsApp or on a chat, but I might end up calling customer service. That context, how can I capture it and put it in that audience? So audience building is where a lot more contextual kind of engagements are being captured nowadays. And then customer journeys, of course, journeys are not static, they're dynamic. How frequently can I update my customer journeys? That is the next big battle vendors are fighting. And then as I build the framework, how can I build the framework from a data and audience kind of a standpoint? How can I build the models? Once I build the model and as I put it in production, I'm also using generative AI to start drafting the email outreach, for example, or even the script for my call center. So augmenting predictive with generative AI, that is how customers are using both together from a application kind of a standpoint. And then as I go further down, activation, I tell buyers, you have 200 models. Out of those 200 models, how many models are sitting on the shelf doing nothing? And they will come back 80% of them, 90% of them. Only 5 are put into production. Then what is the purpose of building those 200 models? Put those models into production, activate it, monitor it, look at how those models are performing and bring them back if the models are not performing well. So that is where the measurement, monitoring, and continuous kind of optimization kicks in. Look at how many of if you're executing a campaign, putting something in a campaign, how many of those are success and a failure? And bring it back into your model building lifecycle, your data lifecycle, and update those models so that you can continuously kind of get more value out of BI models. And organizations just completely break at that point because they don't know, they don't have pipelines, they don't have the data pipelines and the AI pipelines to handle that. So building the rigor is more important. Doing it for 10 models, 50 models is more important than doing it for 200 models. Do it right. That's the framework over here. So how do I apply this, right? I mean, I think, if I think about a consumer, right? If I call in a brand, I want to engage with one brand. I don't want to engage with your marketing department, your sales department, your loyalty, your customer service department. No, I don't want to do that, right? And the way to do that is, one of the ways to do that, many things have to fall into that bucket, including processes and blueprints and change management, is that unified data layer, right? If I have already given you the data for myself and my household, why do I need to repeat that same information 3 different times with your marketing department, with your sales and your customer service? Right? That is the fundamental kind of reason why a unified data layer for any type of predictive AI use cases. And you might have use cases around all of these functions over here, right? Whether it is starting from marketing, as a consumer, I want a targeted message. But as a consumer, I want to make sure that whatever information, whatever my preferences, my needs, my challenges, whatever I've shared as part of your journey gets reflected, not just when you're sending a campaign. When I land you on your website or in your app, I want that same recommendations to show up based on what I have already shared. And once I've bought that product, if I call the customer service for support, I want them to know that you are calling. This is Tappan, and this is the product history you have, and this is where the problems are, and how loyal you are, and how unloyal I am. Based on that, the customer service will change the recommendations and will give you that right kind of treatment to me, right? So that is the bottom line over here. Is how can for a consumer, for the end consumer, I am engaging with a brand of one, not with 7 different kind of systems over here, right? So looking at how can data readiness, how can a unified data layer help? This is where a lot more value you will get out of your data. If your data is shared, you will have less silos. If you have data is shared, if your data is ready for use in multiple departments, multiple use cases, this is where the value will rise and it will be incremental for your brands and for your organizations. Yeah.
Where do you see customer sentiment fitting into that?
I would say customer sentiment, 2 ways you can look at it. One is when I am engaging with the brand on social media, for example, the sentiment might come up over there. The second place the sentiment might come up is when I'm calling them. And if I'm frustrated, there are brands out there that they will real-time track customer sentiment while I'm calling them, and they will divert call to people who are expert in handling that sentiment if the sentiment is bad. So the advanced level of sentiments are kicking in at that level.
And your previous slide where you were showing the right from the augmentation, I'm assuming that when you go to the marketing where you're doing marketing, so you would also look at market conditions. And let's take a look at the big swing with the WNBA that came out last year, right? Everybody jumped on board with what's happening, right? So if you're in the t-shirt business, you would want to really ramp up and start advertising for that, right?
Yeah. So that
on the left-hand side.
Yeah, that will definitely be on the right hand side because you want to first of all you want to capture that event happen. Right. So you already have like maybe 100,000 customer profiles, but now a real-time event is happening. So you augment your profile and your audience assembly with that real-time event happening, and then you adjust your AI model so that you can target it better. Does that make sense? Yeah. So
on this question of customer sentiment, which is an interesting one, I could actually take an application and say the support rep can say this client's irate, or I could say, hey, this person's called 15 times in the last 2 days. Can you expand on that in terms of, that's pretty interesting how we build a whole new model around this whole sentiment, because that's important for.
Yeah, so I think right now, I'll be honest with you, it's very basic, right? It's the models which will detect your sentiment. It can go either way, right? So it's a lot of training data needs to be there in order to build those kind of models. What I have seen is that people will, if my sentiment is negative or if I am really frustrated, they will route the call to an advanced agent who is capable of handling that kind of call. Or in that call, for example, if I have said that this is the 4th time I'm calling for a particular switch, then they will route it to an agent who is expert in electronics or switches. That kind of things, we have seen examples of those coming up, right?
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
The great thing is if you're already capturing the conversations through your phone systems, you can use Sidekick Learn and use a lexicon, and it looks for particular keywords, and those keywords determine something, and then you can feed that into your machine learning.
And then I think additionally what they are doing is that, once the call lands on that agent, for example, and if he's expert in switches, for example, he start typing questions, and behind the scenes, the AI is working to give the agent recommendations. Oh, okay, here is the article you can look at to fix the problem. That kind of recommendations are kicking in also.
And to his point, these keywords, they can also come from the previous call recordings that you might have had over the period of years. And that's your training data.
Yep.
Maybe you don't have to go out and look for that. If you have been doing that for so long, the data is sitting right there. And then nowadays models can translate voice to text messages, and that can be used to create a
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. So let's with the foundation of a data layer, right? Another big topic which comes up more often is around governance, and we did a survey in the CMO the same survey, the CMO priority survey. 40% of the CMOs are, this was one of the top 3 kind of concerns they had when we asked them was around brand and reputation concerns, right? The challenges of implementing AI, Gen AI, and data governance brought in. There are a couple of other challenges was CMOs working with CIOs, for example, right? Data foundation is always a persistent kind of a challenge which comes up. But this bubbled up more and more because of AI, Gen AI, agentic AI type of use cases coming up, right? And again, I think, data governance, people think governance as static. That is the fundamental mistake. Static governance is always dynamic, right? Because your use cases are changing, your business requirements are changing, your regulations are changing, for example, right? So what we suggest is that, build your data governance policies around your customer 360 goals. I'll give you a classic example. Building a campaign and the data governance around that, and a campaign is an email campaign, is very different than an application of a video-based. If you're a retailer and if you're in a store setting and you are monitoring customers coming into the store, and you're modifying your treatment to your customers, is a very different governance requirements over there, because now you're talking about videos and you're talking about facial recognition and things like that. Very different use case. So look at the use case of your marketing use case and make dynamic kind of governance policies based on that use case, right? Look at of course, regulatory and kind of risk kind of requirements. The second is establishing the trust. I have seen vendors, when they collect information about brands, not vendors, when they collect information from customers, they tell back, this is how we are going to use your data. How many brands do that? I have seen brands, when you call 1-800 number, they will tell you your voice is going to be used for AI model training. Do you agree with that or not? And you can select yes or no. So things are changing. So look at establishing trust requires kind of, providing that level of transparency around data usage not within your companies, with the end user, with the consumer. And that is how you can build trust. Brands can build trust. One way to build it, of course, defining, privacy by design, data security, consent management, all of those are important. If you are saying that, no, do not share my email address with this brand and also by sub brands, how does kind of consent management propagates within your organization? That's how you build trust. And then finally, how do you use AI itself, right? Things are advancing such that AI can now detect how many of your data records are empty, how many of your data records are duplicate, how many of your data records are, garbage, for example. How can I fix it, right? So using AI to monitor the quality of your data. Using AI to detect bias detection, right? What are you reusing that same data for your models? That kind of bias detection is also happening now with using AI. So governance at many different levels, establishing policies to trust, automating it will give you that differentiation you need. Personalization, right? Personalization is a tricky subject, right? Personalization varies from individuals to individuals, right? More and more, we did the technology bias survey last year, and it's not just about, I want to purchase something, but finding out why I want to purchase something, finding out my need, preferences, and behaviors, so that we are, as a consumer, I'm looking for from the vendors and from the brands, what is the recommended next step? Do you even care when I'm landing on my page, when I'm landing in your app, when I'm landing in your website, right? They want, and if I do that, is it send me useful ads, not just keep on sending quality over quantity. That is something which is recurring, coming up recurring in our surveys, right? So how do you build that kind of personalization? So that three different levels. And I think that all depends on the maturity of where you want to, maturity of organization, maturity of your data stack, AI, a lot of things. The first and foremost is that connectedness, right? How connected you are, right? That is where, bringing in first party, second party data, bringing in, graph data, for example, to identify complex relationship within your customer base, right? Because we are all connected. How I might have a personal checking account, but I also have my home equity line of credit. I might even have a business account, for example. How those relationships are connected? That is how personalization could be, right? So that's one way, looking into your cross-functional systems, workflows, so that you can build that entire picture around how connected the customer is. The second is around contextual, right? So how finding out contextual information so that you can drive personalization. And that could be I might be engaging with a brand as an individual at an event or a different location, right? So how can you capture all of that? And then personalization is also about time of the day. When do I engage with a brand, right? And where do I engage? Is it within the app or within the store, right? So that's how the contextual kind of relationships are built. And then finally, it's about that continuous kind of engagement, right? This is difficult. Continuous is like looking in real-time data, for example, looking into, if you're landing on the page and if, majority of the customers are having friction on your web page, you are looking at friction and quickly kind of fixing those problems, right? So those are the ways you can look at, handle personalization. Again, very quickly, I know we're running out of time. What are some of the AI 360 or customer 360 use cases right now people are looking at it, right? So if you look at campaigns, right, unique kind of messaging, for example, right now, these are the top use cases already being implemented. Next best recommendation, cross-sell, upsell right now. Within 12 to 18 months, these are the use cases people are thinking about, right? If you think about digital marketing, personalized digital assistant, like digital assistant for loyalty, like premium customers, or, journey discovery, dynamically modifying, updating your journeys, right? This is what they're looking at from a 12-month kind of use cases. I'm going to build this case and look at how this builds up, like, what are the priorities, right? So all of these use cases look at, high value, high risk. What I would suggest is that if you're going to do personalization at scale or voice-based assistance we are talking about, right? Lot more risk. Try it out. Try pilot use case. Learn from it. Iterate from it. If you're thinking about high value, high risk. High value, medium risk, double down on it. Those are proven kind of use cases over there, right? Risk can be managed. To double down on things like next best recommendation, cross-sell, upsell, churn, for example, right? Medium value, high risk, like video creation from scripts. I don't think the models are still good at that, right? So you might want to wait for that, right? So that, and then I think this is where a lot of questions around agents, advisors, and workflows, and how does data requirements change, right? When you look at assistants and AI assistants, simple AI assistants, right, for content generation. When you look at the data needs, right, look at how you're retaining the context. How does short-term memory play into the picture? How you need a high-quality training data. If you think about agents, for example, autonomous agents, where you're thinking about A/B testing, for example, you might want to bring in more context awareness. You want to bring in data aggregation across different segments and journeys, for example. If you think about agentic workflows, you want to think about high-quality label data. How you want to build a data pipeline so that you are continuously kind of optimizing it. And then again, as you think about, right, again, agentic workflow is way out there, maybe 4 or 5 years. Right now, assistants and advisors, people are experimenting with it, putting it in production. And the next is agents, right? Agents are next big thing, and people are trying it out, doing pilots around it. Last slide, from a guidance kind of a standpoint, invest in a unified kind of a data layer. Look at, based on your needs, goals, objectives, look at how the unified data layer can help you. And once you invest in it, think about continuously kind of optimize it, improving upon it, right? So look at one use case, how can you expand it to 5 different use cases with that same data layer? The second is, the CIO CMO relationship. Have a data ownership within the CMO organization for Customer 360, but partner with CIOs because they are important as part of your governance cycle. And then finally, from an implement kind of a standpoint, look at your architecture. Is that architecture ready for generative AI, agentic AI? You have built that architecture of predictive AI. How can you augment it with that same architecture from an implementation kind of a standpoint? So that's a very quick journey from a Customer 360 kind of a set. I hope it was useful. Maybe we can take questions after that and invite the panel.
You can take
Yeah, sure.
answer any questions.
Sure. Any questions? Sure.
Yeah,
Thank you. Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry, I just have one question. There's a lot of conversation about ethical AI. So I was just curious, like, where does that fall within this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's usually falls under the governance aspect I was talking about. This is where, I mean, I had a slide in here around governance. I think that's where the ethical AI would fall in, because now you're looking at over here, especially on the trust side, because you're looking at not just data governance but AI governance also, right? Am I able to explain my model? Is my model biased, for example, right? Or if I have, a regulatory kind of inquiry 5 years down the line, am I keeping all of my records so that I can open up? Because they will ask for, on this specific day, you had a model in production. Show me who built the model, what was the data element in there. So that's where the ethical AI would come in.
Thank you, Tapan. That was a great session. I know it's one of the few sessions that we have recently attended where if you do a word count, something else has overtaken AI, I guess, right? Usually in all these sessions, if you do a word count, the word AI is more than something else. Thanks for that. I'll quickly hand over to the panelist. I welcome a panelist here to the stage, and again, the reason why we chose this topic, 360 or data engineering, and what you're going to see now is kind of the under the hood, right? I mean, these are people who are dealing it in their day-to-day life, starting from the moderator Ganesh Ram or Tony from CR, and Satish as well as Julie. They're all eminent leaders who are handling it day-to-day in their workplace, and that's why we thought they would be a great panel here, and I welcome you all to join us for the next session.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks, Stephen, for the insightful presentation there. I would like to kick this off with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, right? So I suppose you all know Mahatma Gandhi. He's the leading figure in freedom fight of India. He says, a customer is the most important visitor on our premises. He is not dependent on us. We are dependent on him. He is not an interruption in our work. He is the purpose of it. He is not an outsider in our business. He is part of it. We are not doing him a favor by serving him. He is doing us a favor by giving us an opportunity to do so. Right now, I grew up studying this in our school, but I did not really understand the profound nature of it back then. But as I start to work with customers, I see how insightful this was. And he was busy fighting freedom fights, and I wonder when he got time to say this, but apparently he said this when he was practicing law. You see, we all talk about customer 360 and how this is the era of personalization, how self-service is important, how we have to enable the customer. But going back to the first principles, what does customer 360 really mean? Right? In my point of view, it is a genuine interest in you to understand your customer, right? So to know what you can do, how you can help them, how you can make them feel good, right? And there was this small restaurant back home, and when I go there and sit, they already know what I eat, and I felt special when they do that. I felt like Bond walking into this big hotel, and then he says usual, he gets the room, right? So they know they know what he wants, and that is the special feeling that we want to give us to our customers, right? And I think that's the foundations of customer 360. A genuine curiosity and interest to serve your customer better. And how can we do that? That small restaurant had maybe like 20 customers, so they knew pretty much everyone what they had on a daily basis. But that's not scalable, right? How can you scale this idea of knowing about your customers? And that is where data comes into play, right? And there is abundance of data today, right? How do you govern that? How do you bring that together? How do you get insights from it? Is really what we will try to discuss in this panel. We have a variety of people, leaders from, like Francis was stating, variety of industries. Starting with global payments, they serve different streams of business. School solutions, higher ed, restaurants and parking places, and merchants are everywhere. It's a very wide variety of customers, and CR are the people who are behind the homes. That's how the homes we live. That's how I see them, and so is Deluxe. Leading in financial services technology. So very different streams of business, but with the unique objective of serving the customer. And I have worked with global payments and CR in person, so I know the importance that a customer gets in that environment and ecosystem. So we will hear from them about how they are able to do this, how they are able to meet this objective. So I would like to start with a quick introduction. Julie, maybe add a fun fact, so that we can remember the fun fact and the customer 360 things that you said about. Just introduce yourself with maybe throw in a fun fact about you.
All right. Well, hello. It's nice to meet all of you. I'm Julie Elmore, and I guess my fun fact of the day will be, if I look familiar to you, it could be because the first time I made it in front of the AJC leisure section was when I was getting certified to be a ballet dancer instructor.
Satish?
Hey everyone, Satish Balasubramanian. I work for Deluxe. Fun fact, I don't know whether fun fact or what, but I've been hearing about Customer 360, doing Customer 360 for probably last 22 years.
Yeah.
There are multiple variations that we keep talking about Customer 360, but I think the foundational principle remains the same.
Okay. Yeah, it's a fun fact about customer 360.
I actually don't think it remains the same. So maybe we should have a hot debate about it. Because we don't even know who customer is to us. Is it the customer, the merchant we're selling to? The customer, we sell point of sale as an example. We sell it to Inspire Brands around the corner, who then sell it to franchisees, who then use it as us as customers if you go into an Arby's or a Jimmy John's. So
And that's why we're doing it for 22 years.
we're trying to figure out what is a customer and who is the customer, and even defining the catalog of it. So
Sure, Tony.
Tony D'Souza, Construction Resources. Scott Schimmel, my boss here, is the CIO of Construction Resources. Fun fact, I was out in Poland 2 years prior to joining CR, setting up a global technology center, and realized that learning a local language, I'd never had an opportunity to include all these consonants in the word, and found out how tongue twisting it is to learn a new language with a lot of consonants. And maybe a second fun fact, I'm meeting Julie for the first time face to face, even though our paths have crossed several years back. So
decades back.
Yes.
Was she your customer?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, Julie, maybe I'll start with you here because you already started on defining who the customer is. And I think in the global payments context, it is really, it's interesting to hear from you from that point of view because, like I said, you serve so many streams of business. And when we go out and acquire businesses, we are not just acquiring business and technology solutions. We are acquiring the customers, new demographics, new expectations. how do you manage all of that? And in your point of view, how do you define a customer? To your point earlier, who is a customer?
I think it depends who you're working with. We don't have a single definition of customer. It's just the reality of it. We have if you're in sales, you've defined customer to be who you're going to market to sell against and the things you want to do to the things that Tapan talked about. How do you help cross-sell them? How do you worry about customer attrition? How do you keep from losing them? That's the merchant that we're actually building the relationship. So to them, it's the customer. We have a team that cares about who's going to call us when something goes wrong. Sometimes it's that merchant, but sometimes it's those of us as actual customers in the room trying to use a piece of software that's not doing what it needs to do. So we actually define all of those customers uniquely and have kept them separate for a reason. Is it the right thing to do? I have no idea, but it's how we're choosing to make it work, and we're making progress forward to be able to take on that journey that Tapan kind of outlined before. We're still in the journey to say, what does 360 mean? We're probably more of a 180 right now of what we think it looks like from the time we meet you and want to bring you on as a prospect to making you into a customer and what that looks like. We get the sales aspect. That part's pretty easy. We get the utilization of our software. That's pretty easily, because sometimes it's just to say, are they using the software we've sold them and how are they using it? Then we have the operational side of that software of how is it performing? And then we have it when you call our customer contact center. What is that experience to the customer sentiment that was coming up in the room earlier, so that we can then use that. Quite frankly, we use it to say, is it a risk to customer attrition? So we've got that purview done okay. But there's a whole nother side to that, but we're still working on the journey and what does that even look like? Trying to figure out as different tools come to market. Some of us were talking earlier about Salesforce. You brought up some of the Amazon Connect components and what's there. We're trying to figure out how do those technologies that are becoming available help us rethink how we define what 360 even is, because we don't have this magically clean definition that's working across the board.
Interesting, very interesting. So Satish, in your own words, how will you define customer 360 for Julie?
I'll start with what Julie said. I think the definition of customer is always complex. Like if you take example of Deluxe, we work with FIs, we work with direct customers, which are direct customer, meaning consumers. We work with small businesses. And depending on our line of business, we work with merchants in few places. We work with some of the large enterprises in some places. So there is no single definition of who a customer is for us. And that's the challenge that we start with. So, and there are also requirements around hierarchy. Like we work with a bank, the bank sells to another customer. So by that fact, that customer becomes our customer or not is a big legal question that we always have. So in our view, what we are basically trying to do is how do we identify an entity that interacts with us? And we are able to go across the lineage of identifying all the other entities that they serve. So we are trying to create that unified view of an entity and all the relationship that particular entity has with us as an organization. That's what we are defining as a customer 360. Again, Julie's point, I like what she said. Whether it's 180 or 360, we still don't know. I think we are still trying to figure out what are the various facets that we want to really go and tie to an entity. We have been successful in doing few pieces. Like I can know, because in our case, like let's take check as an example, which is like a legacy business for us. A person could come and place a check directly to us, order a check, or they could walk into a Chase Bank, order a check from Chase Bank, or he or she has a small business, they could order a check for that small business. We have maintained all of these three separate businesses because that's how the business was operating long back. And now we want to serve that individual as a person so that we can go and sell him our merchant business, or we can go and sell him our B2B payment business. We are not able to identify that individual uniquely because the name, the address, everything is so different in each of the businesses, depending on when they actually came to us. So the biggest requirement that at least I define to the team is how can I go and identify an individual or an entity as an entity? And that's what we are trying to define in Customer 360. If I'm able to create a unified view or a single customer view to say this person has all these relationships with us, and we are able to uniquely identify what the person's demographic is, what the person's firmographic is, what are the interactions that they have had with us. So trying to assemble all of these pieces together is what Customer 360 for me. And it's not easy, like we say, because there are so many variations. That's why I think everything that Tapan talked about, from a data assembly to entity resolution to so many things comes into play. But creating that unified view is what Customer 360 for.
So, I understand and acknowledge that it is difficult to define who the customer is. especially because we have so many, right? But let me turn the table. If we look at it from the customer point of view, if Deluxe is practicing the idea of customer 360, moving towards it, what will they see from there? See, for them it is just one Deluxe, right? So how will they see you practicing the idea of customer 360?
The basic thing, let's start with customer service. Say right now, some person placed a check order with us. When they call up our customer service, it's so tough for an individual to identify what are the various relationships that this individual has with us. Is he a direct customer? Is he a small business owner? Or is he applying to a bank or distributor, whatever it is? So the customer experience is so bad that one, it takes a long time for us to identify why the individual is calling us. What are the various interactions that this person has had? See, omni-channel is pretty common in many places right now, but for a company like us, which is 110-year-old, predominantly living in legacy, we still don't have that omni-channel experience established in a very seamless way. So the biggest benefit that the customer will see, or what we want our customer to see, is irrespective of whatever relationship that they have with us, when a person calls, we are able to identify immediately who the person is, whom we are talking to, what are the various interactions that they have had with us. If there is a salesperson who is having conversation with them, we should be able to identify who that salesperson is, who is talking to that individual. So that's the foundational ask from us to say, can I service my customer better? Like going back to what you said about Mahatma Gandhi, if customer are our primary focus, we are starting with our customer, how well I serve my customer becomes my starting point. That's what the primary thing that we want to establish as part of Customer 360. And then there are obviously other things like right now, probably the person is having a check relationship with us. But we also sell some of the data product. Like they have a company, we can go and do marketing on their behalf. There are two different individual salespeople trying to talk to them without knowing that there is another relationship that exists. Now, internally for my salesperson or for my marketers, they should be able to identify person is doing such a volume of business with us. These are their sweet spot. Can I sell an additional product to them? The cross-sell and upsell that Tapan talked about. That's the next thing. Similarly, I think we can keep adding on like personalization. How am I able to segment my customer? How can I really go and give them the value-added service? There are so many things that can get added. It's more like a layered cake. But starting point for me is how can I service my customer better?
Excellent. Okay. And Tony, like Satish was calling out, Customer 360 has been around 20-25 years. No, I don't know, probably it is. But it's only now we are coming together and talking about it, and we have such a great room with people. Why do you think it's important to talk and think about Customer 360 now? Now, what's the significance of doing that now?
Sure. So, today's world, I mean, we are seeing a convergence of, one is customer experience, right? Like what Satish was saying and Julie was saying, people are coming from so many different channels. They want that seamless experience, right? You have that. Second piece is just business strategy on how you want to engage with the customer. And third piece is technology, right? Things are changing as if, there's no tomorrow. So you got these three aspects. And now on top of that, if you look at those three aspects, like for example, in construction resources, we basically are a one-stop shop for your home, right? Whether it's appliances, fireplace, garage doors, one-stop shop. But if you as a customer have gone and shopped in different places, it's like you go here for fireplaces, you go here for your countertops, go there for lighting. And when they look at you as a company, they want just a seamless view, meaning you should know what I selected for my countertops, does my lighting match? What I selected for my lighting, does my flooring match? They expect you to know all of that. So now the question is, even in our world, we had different businesses, and I'm sure Scott, as Satish is talking and just talking like, yep, that's us, that's us, that's us. We have all these siloed data within our organizations, right? Now the question is, our customer expects a seamless experience. We've got silos within ourselves. How do we bring those silos together? How do we bring that data together? How do we stitch it up together so that you as a customer, when you walk into our, whether it's design centers, whether you talk to our outside sales, how do you feel that we know who you are, right? we understand what you're doing, versus telling 10 different people, well, we have 9 categories, 9 different salespeople, here's my plan, here's my plan, here's my plan. It's like, guys, I just gave you my plans. I gave you what I wanted. I gave you my colors. How do we bring that together? That push from a customer experience standpoint is pushing us together, saying, okay, we need to get our ducks in a row. We need to figure out who is this user, what do they want, how do we do it? And I think that's why a lot of people are talking about Customer 360 these days.
Okay. Julie, we will soon get to the technology aspects of Customer 360, but before that, what does it mean for a business to be aligned with such a strategy? What should business leaders think, and will an organization need a cultural change to be aligned towards something like this? And for someone who is starting, what should be the starting point for this?
I think I'll naively have to take my position on this because we don't have a Customer 360 strategy. We don't have a position on it to say this is how that would go and this is what it would look like. So I don't have a single success or failure story to lean on, to be really frank. But I certainly have had time where we said, what is our strategy need to look like? And I think it's defining what that is. And is it focusing on all the different channels that we've been talking about? Is it talking about an end user? It's coming up with what is the strategy and then getting all the businesses from a consumption perspective to align to this is what we're going to focus on and this is the thing we're going to go after and what does that look like. So it could just be the upfront experience. It could be that we're saying right now our first thing is to focus on the go-to-market and the customer around that, and then the second thing is around the experience of the channel providers, and then the next thing is the call center experience, or it could be a horizontal layer across them all. It's aligning everyone, whatever those groups are, whether it's 9 different businesses or whatever that is, to say, here's our intention, here's our strategy. But none of it really matters if you don't have the business strategy and then you don't have a data strategy to support it. Because you can't even get to the 360 discussion without it. When Topham was kind of going through his circle of what that looked like, I'd never looked at it quite the same way. But really, if you don't have a data strategy to support before you even get to 360, I don't even know if you can deliver on a 360. So to me, it's a business strategy, alignment of all the business functions. Then it's a data strategy that supports that business strategy. And then you can talk about 360. Because if you don't have the data strategy, the other components aren't going to work either.
So is there one single KPI or multiple KPIs that's indicative of the success of your Customer 360 initiatives? And Tony, you could also answer this. You talked about, hey, I have a countertop, is my lighting fixtures matching that? Is that a cross-sell opportunity, or how do you measure the success of this?
I think the answer is no. There can't be one measurement. I just don't think that's feasible in a success or failure factor.
Or what could be more than one? Like what are the few?
I agree. It's not one. The question is, again, you're building 360 for what, right? It could be as simple as, hey, I'm on this point of sale and I want to upsell, right? People have used the word suggested selling in the past, right? The question is what? Now, could we put a checkpoint saying, hey, John came in, he was buying a toothpaste and I sold him a toothbrush. Is that a check mark? Or is that just a start of a journey, right? It's just a start of a journey. I don't think so we can hone in on one KPI. But the question is, did we move the needle forward? And did we make the customer experience better, right? Because tomorrow it's a whole different challenge, and your goalpost is moving further and further. So I would look at how are we improving the overall experience, and are we moving the needle forward? That's my thought.
Adding to that, what I'll say is, there is no one KPI as such. It all depends on what your use cases are, what you're really going to serve at the end of the day, right? Because if customer service is the priority for me, in my case, if you remember what I said, say the calls were taking 8 minutes to even identify who the customer is. If I'm able to bring down the 8-minute call to 2 minutes or 1 minute in identifying the customer, all the interactions that he or she has had with me, then that's a success. So that's the KPI that I'm defining for the customer service use case. But when we talk about cross-sell and upsell, right now an individual picks up a phone or sends an email to another salesperson saying this is so-and-so bank, they have a relationship with us and they want to do XYZ with you. Instead of that person sending an mail getting lost, losing the opportunity. If people are able to see things by themselves and they are able to sell additional product to a customer, then that's a success for me. So I think there are multiple KPIs that we have to define depending on what you are really trying to achieve out of Customer 360. I think that's how I look at it.
And what do you think about the technology readiness for this? Do you think we are technically more ready today when compared to a few years back? What's the technology landscape of this?
Meaning, are we in an advanced stage from a technology standpoint? Absolutely yes. Because, like I said, like when I did first, we didn't call it Customer 360 at that point in time. I think we called it a CRM at that point in time, like 2003, 2004. The technology that we had, like I had to really do a lot of heavy lifting. So we were using Informatica then to do all the data sourcing, data transformation, and all of those. The volume constraints were there. The processing time were pretty long. But when you go from there to where we are right now with all the hyperscalers, all the cloud services that are available, you have much more better options. Like you can just get real-time events. You can fire an event. The events could easily be transformed to wherever you want that particular event to land. Similarly, a lot of bulk processing, like huge data, we could process it in minutes right now with the technology that we have. Even though the concepts still remain the same, you're still doing a data sourcing, you're still doing a data ingestion, data transformation, you are still creating a persistent data layer, you're creating a data distribution layer. The concepts are still the same, but I think the technology that we have currently, and especially with AI and from a entity resolution, you have to build your own model to do an entity resolution. Right now, with some of the models that are available, foundational models, it's much more easier for us to go and resolve an entity. So there are definitely advancements in every of the area, which is adding to making this entire Customer 360 a reality much more sooner, much more efficient than it was before a few years.
Excellent. And in order to enable this technology, Julie, you mentioned about data strategy, right? So in large enterprises, the data is usually widespread, siloed. What do you do to bring them together in one centralize the data basically break the silos and get common insights from that?
We don't do what I really want to do. That's what you do. Don't do. Because in my heart, it's like, move it all together, make it clean. It's in one place. It's happy. It's healthy. It's easy to maintain, but it's slow. It's expensive. It really doesn't make sense. And every consultant that comes in tells me why I never ever should really do that. But it's what I really want to do. I've never actually done it, so it may not work either, but it feels like a really good idea to just put it all together. I think the reality of it is, to your point, that the technology's ahead of the business problem at this point. So it's a matter of how do you bring the data together, at least at a layer that it feels like it's together, whether it's not. There's so many new technologies out there, whether it's an iceberg layer or a Delta Lake or whatever that is, to say, how do I make it feel like it's together, even though it's in a different cloud? This one's over here on-prem, but from a user experience, it doesn't matter if I can put the right services around it to make it feel like my 9 different businesses get the same Salesforce experience because they know, hey, they're using this product and this one, but not this one. It really doesn't matter where the data is. If I can bring the experience to make it feel like it's together, I think is really where we spend time now, and that's what it needs to look like. Now, there's still the component and foundational things you have to do, or it doesn't come out nicely. If you don't have data cataloging, you're foundationally going to have a problem. Because if we don't use some of the words the same way, then it's never going to come together the way you want. Or it might come together the way someone's intended, but a business isn't going to adopt it because it's not the way they've defined it. It's not the way they look at it. So therefore, it's crap data to them.
I see. Okay, so no, I understand this as centralization doesn't mean physically bringing the data together. As long as we have a logical abstraction on top with cataloging, we will still be able to get. Is that a fair understanding?
It is. I think cataloging is. It's awful. It's extremely manual. It's very maintenance intensive. And there is software out there to help you do some of that now. But I honestly have seen where once we do the hard, ugly work, it then makes everything else better. Your data quality automatically goes up. Your ability to actually bring and tell stories and have dashboards and find insights goes up because you've actually got alignment around what that catalog looks like. And you can actually do things with that you couldn't have done without it at a grand scale. You can scale it in a way that just isn't possible if you don't do it.
Okay. If I want to add to your question, the concepts have constantly been undergoing a change. Like earlier, when we were in the data warehouse world, we always wanted to bring the data centrally. We wanted to persist the data in a particular way. And Customer 360 was always like, I want to create that golden record. So creating that single record was the biggest thing. which is where I think many customer 360 implementation fail, because to Julie's point, bringing the data together by itself is cumbersome, and then creating that single golden record was always going to be tough, because every business unit is going to say their record is much more superior than the rest. So right now, I think we are talking about more distributed data. We are talking about virtual data stores with data mesh and data fabric concept. You really don't need the data to be in a central location. It could be an isolated way. You could create it on the fly, the unified record. And we are no more talking about that single golden record. We are talking about logical single view of the customer. And I could create a customer golden record depending on the use case. For marketing, it could be different. For customer service, it could be different. For sales, it could be different. So the technology helps us to do all these things. And concepts are also, I think, constantly changing. It's no more like what concepts we used to have before. Everything for the betterment.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks. Tony, centralized or not, data quality is important, because any insights that you derive from that roots from the quality of the data. What do you suggest that we do to ensure better quality, so better insights?
So again, quality is an ongoing process, right? But for us, like for example, when we started at CR, first thing was identify data sources. I mean, there could be numerous places for your data sources, right? Understand where's your data coming from? Who is the owner of that data, right? Do they even know what that data is, right? What are the known issues? I think understanding or just making a catalog of your data sources, who owns it, what is it used, how is it used, what are the known qualities? For me, that is our first starting point, right? Now, after that, now you got, like Tapan was showing you that chart saying, hey, let's do cleansing. Yes, those are normal things, right? Let's do cleansing, let's do standardization. I mean, we struggle simple ways. I mean, we've got 9 business units. Even how people refer to a project is 9 different ways. Now, okay, now what do you do with standardization? So identify source, try and cleanse your data, define some standardization. Otherwise, you'll be this nerd in that data, cleaning up this data forever, and there's no business outcome, right? And people are saying, why is it taking you this long? Once you get that ready, the next step is going to be continuously monitor and keep it, because it's always good. You got the data, you've cleaned it, hooray, and then 3 months later, you've seen that your quality goes down because people are not following, you forgot, you lost your focus. So as you identify source, get it cleaned up, put your process together so that you can have some validation, monitoring to upkeep the health of the data. I mean, that's the journey we are taking. And I think it helps to a great extent, but also there should be that org support to make sure that the data is healthy as well.
Okay. So it is not just the initial bootstrap, continuous monitoring and upkeep is important.
Absolutely.
And Tony, just continuing with that, what's the the practical applications of some of the intelligence that you get out of this data, the insights in the context of CR? What should be a practical use case?
So for us, it's like I was telling you, right? Our customers, they engage with us from a design center, right? We open up a new showroom in Bucket. We're opening a new showroom in West Side. It's an inspiration showroom, right? So a customer could come in to our Bucket showroom, right? They would like something. Then they could go to our Decatur showroom. They could like something else. They could go to our West Side showroom. They could have something different. For us, a practical example is, how do I know who's come into what showroom, right? How do I know what did they select? What did they like, right? How do I know that I'm being more educated so that you came to this showroom, you selected this countertop, and now you're going to another place to select lighting? How do I make sure I'm giving you the right recommendation to choose the right lighting that will match to your countertops, right? Our business value is bring all these categories from a seamless experience standpoint, know our customer touch points, how they are interacting with our showrooms, our salespeople, because you could have given your Pinterest pictures to our sales guy and he forgot to upload it into our system. So I'm giving you a purple color and you hate purple color, right? I mean, so our business value is trying to understand different touch points, bring that together, and make sure that we are at least on the journey of giving an improved experience to our customer. That's the value. Now for that, data quality is important, right? The picture quality you send us is important. The customer contact is important. Their preferences are important. What did they see in each showroom? What did they like? That is important. Some are unstructured. People are just typing in notes saying, hey, Satish came in and he loved this, but his wife overruled him because she came later and said, no, she doesn't like the color, right? We have all it's always the guy who comes in first, set up the project, but then the spouse comes in and then changes everything else, right? So for us, it's like, how do I know who my true customer is?
Exactly.
Right? Is it Satish who's going to pay the bill, or is it his wife who is going to make all the selections, right? For us, bringing all that together so that we can make a quicker, seamless experience, because our goal is get you in, have a seamless experience building a home, get it all done, and have a good project success. That's what we are trying to do with all our data and quality.
Okay, thanks. And I think you also defined customer 360 for us there. Keep the better, keep the better half happy. Okay, we'll open the floor for any questions from the group. Yeah.
I have two. The first one is, and I think Julie, you guys all touched on this. It's the customer of my customer is my customer too. And when you start to look at this problem space, even if you say you're going to start with the data layer, what do you attack first? So like for my business, an insurance carrier is the customer that hires us, that buys our software, but our customers are their vendors and their consumers, their insureds. So, and within a carrier, there's lots of customers inside, the treasury group, the claims, the policy, the customer service team. So if you can't eat the elephant in one bite. So where do you start? Do you start with the client who hired you as your customer or their customers? Because if they're noisy, the client or the carrier is never going to be happy with you. I just am interested if you have a perspective on where do you start?
We actually have this debate daily.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know that I can tell you where to start, because I think depending on where we are in the journey, on which thing feels the most important at the time, where we're at now is we're going after what we think will make it the stickiest.
Oh.
So if we think that fixing this part of the middleman is actually going to make the relationships the stickiest, we're fixing that first, and then we're going after the next thing. I don't know that it's right, but our number one thing is how do we keep our customers that we have? So that stickiness factor is really important right now, because there are so many startups coming out that our AI is changing the way people build and sell products. So we're mostly worried about that immediate stickiness.
Yes.
And there's some pieces of software where it's the end customer, and there's some that it's actually the customer in the middle that's most important. So we have a little bit of varied depending on the product, but at the end of the day, we're focusing on stickiness.
That's a good perspective.
In our case, what I would say is it depends on which problem we want to solve.
Yeah.
Like if you're immediate, the person who is hiring you, in our case, for example, banks are the one that we mainly deal with. Bank deal with multiple of our actual customers, but we are not even able to resolve our banks uniformly. Like we have 100 variations of JP Morgan Chase in our system. Now, for us to resolve that is much more critical, because I really need to know that all this volume of business comes from this one bank.
Right.
So that's the first problem that we want to tackle. I think we need to keep going till that end customer, because probably that end customer is the one who is actually going to make us the revenue, final revenue. But I think we have to solve it one by one so that you have the good quality of data, which is closer to you first, and then you keep going to the further extent.
You read my mind. I mean, for us, we try to keep it simple, whether it was right or wrong. At least previously, our definition was, if you're the one who's interacting with us, you're a customer, all following are consumers. So we try to, because this constant discussion of who the customer is, we said, okay, you're the first touch point, you're a customer, all following touch points are consumers. But we had the same approach. It's not about the customer, what problem are we trying to solve, right? Are we solving your problem, or are we solving your consumers or your customer, which is a consumer's problem? And then approaching it from that standpoint. Otherwise, we might build a solution and then figure out that your end consumer is still not happy because you've not built the right thing.
And just as a quick follow-up, because I can't just let it go. I pay the bill and I make all the decisions.
There you go.
So
We'll have a flag in our customer
Yeah.
360 who says that.
that's it. And then one follow-up question, and I'll take an answer from any of you. Julie, you touched on it though, is who in your company owns the data catalog and the definition of the elements? Like who decides when all the business lines call this thing something different? Who owns that in your company? If you have that practice.
The majority is technology.
Yeah.
But data sits in technology at Global Payments. The chief data officer is in technology. I don't love it.
That's
but
what I was afraid you were going to say.
when we have
It's
to
not
have
who I want to own it.
the federated conversation, then somebody has to be a middle person to
yeah,
own
the
it.
arbiter.
So we're playing the arbiter role more than anything else. I think if data wasn't in tech and we pulled that out, it would be that data organization. But at our company, data is in tech.
I think in most organizations, it's like it starts with technology, but ideally a business person who understands that. But again, it's a tug of war, right? Who owns that?
Yeah.
Is it yours? Is it cross-functional?
Actually, don't statistically. I'm in week 2 of chief data officer training at Carnegie Mellon, and there's 98 people in my class. And last week we talked about who owns the data decisions when it comes to data, not technology, but data. More than half the class is it's owned by business, and when you break down business, half of it's owned by finance.
Finance.
And I
Which I
agree
thought
with
was interesting. And then that's 90 students. So take that for what it's worth, but it's 90 people like this room because it's people like us in my class.
I agree with that. Not the finance part of it, that's news to me, but the data should be owned by business. Like not in our current org. Current org is very small, so we don't have a separate org which is owning the data. But I used to work for American Express before. We had a separate organization, data organization, which was sitting with business, and they made all the decision on the data, even the definition of data, the uniform way in which you recognize the data, everything, even the rules around which data takes precedence over the other, because there is the same set of customer information flowing in from multiple systems. Even those were made by the data organization, which is part of business.
It's finance because historically, finance is the most mature data catalog of data, right? Assets and accounts payable and receivables, all of that's been easily defined the longest. So that's how it comes to be. That's what I learned.
Thank you.
Okay, just one more question, if we have any.
Ganesh?
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to learn, from a 360 point of view, who do you think in industry is a gold standard? If you guys know from your perspective.
At least in my network, I've not seen everybody has been on a journey. I mean, as I was building, I was talking to people in Walmart and these other big retailers. I assume that, hey, they might have their ducks in a row, but figure out that all of us are on the same board. Everybody's on the same board.
Okay.
It's just where someone is from a maturity standpoint, but I'm coming to know everybody's on the same board.
I don't know, like in my professional life, there's not a ton that I think are there yet, but personally, like when I use Amazon or Delta, they usually are right. Like they know why I'm calling or what I'm coming for. Oh, you're calling? Is it about this last flight or this upcoming flight or like I would say they're the best of the ones I get to interact with. I at Dollar General built the marketing and advertising platform, but I think it's awful because we do it based on not who you are, but what we want to sell to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the platforms I think are built that way, in that it's successful in their mind, but it's not successful to me as a consumer. So I think the gold standard is also an interesting question. Is it what we, the Dollar Generals, want it to be, or is it we what the consumer want it to be? Like at Dollar General, I'm a Pepsi drinker, which probably doesn't agree with most people in the room. I don't buy Coke products. I don't. But Dollar General will still market Coke products to me because Coke will pay them a penny to push the ad to me.
That's right.
Yep.
I think it's the same. I don't think there is one golden person that we could look at. Retailers are generally better because I think they have, and especially someone who is who has built in the modern way, like Amazon, for example, or I think they have all the needed power. They have all the needed technology capabilities to bring the data together. Pandemic is a good example, right? They were able to turn on something like an online ordering and they were able to deliver touchlessly within few months. So they were able to do all of those. So retails are generally better. I've been most of my career in financial services and banks. it's not that good there because the complexity of data is pretty high. The classic conversation that we started, who is actually our customer, I think is a big question mark. So typically, I think we all try to get it better, multiple iterations, but I don't think we are there.